Hello students, I, Varsha, your teacher for today, welcome you all to this interesting session of our class. Today we are going to start a new chapter which is Weathering the Storm in Ersama. I do hope that you will enjoy learning it and will take the important message of this chapter also with you to execute in your daily lives. So, let's start this chapter. Okay? Weathering the Storm in Ersama. Before I start, I would like to introduce you to this chapter which tells us to stay positive and keep your calm in difficult and terrible situations. This story takes us through a beautiful ride of so many adventurous struggles of the boy Prashant. He was completely devastated and broken, but he didn't lose his calm and emerged as a leader to help the people, those who were in need. He was a very young boy. He could not have gathered his courage, then it would have been very difficult for all of them to bear whatever happened. So, the chapter wants us to tell that there are certain situations in our life which cannot be controlled or which are not in our hands, like natural disasters, mishaps, accidents. But we should not give up in that situation. If you are completely broken and if you quit, then you are a loser and you cannot tackle the complexities of life. So this chapter is a very motivating chapter for all of us, because the wrath and fury of the nature's devastation which was experienced in the year 1999 in the super cyclone of Orissa left everybody shocked. But the courage of the people all throughout the state brought them together and helped them to create a new life, and they were back into action. So, the lesson is we should not give up at any cost, and we should always be together and support the people around us, which will really help us to overcome any difficult situation in our life. So let us see what happens in the story and how Prashant, the protagonist of this story, with his courage and bravery, manages to tackle the most difficult situation of life. So here is the inspiring story, Weathering the Storm in Ersama. Before the chapter starts, the writer has put up a very curious story for you. He wants you to know that what exactly happened in the story. So the cyclone that hit Orissa in October 1999 killed thousands of people and devastated hundreds of villages. For 2 dreadful nights, Prashant, a young man, was marooned on the roof of a house. On the 3rd day, he decided to go to his village. Did he find his family? We all are eager to know that. So let us come to the story. The story starts this way. On 27th October 1999, 7 years after his mother's death, Prashant had gone to the block headquarters of Ersama, a small town in coastal Odisha, some 18 kilometers from his village, to spend the day with a friend. In the evening, a dark and menacing storm quickly gathered. Winds beat against the houses with a speed and fury that Prashant had never witnessed before. Heavy and incessant rain filled the darkness. ancient trees were uprooted and crashed to the earth. So, this is the story of Prashant. At the time when there was this devastating super cyclone in the month of October, and on 27th October actually Prashant, this young boy, he had been to Ersama, which is a small town in coastal Odisha in the district of Jagat Singhpur, and exactly 18 kilometers from his village. Now Prashant was visiting his village after 7 long years of his mother's death. His mother had died before 7 years, and after that he could not gather that much courage to visit back to his family, to his village, because he felt so much sad. So anyhow, the time had come to visit his village and he went to meet his friend. But suddenly there was a change in the weather. By the evening, there was a very strong storm. Menacing means something which is very dreadful and dangerous, so which was going to destroy everything completely. So menacing means which brings destruction, which is very dreadful and harmful. So this storm which had come, that was very, very dangerous, and the wind, the intensity of the wind, the speed of the wind was very high. It seemed that the wind was very, very angry, and this was all so sudden. Prashant had never experienced this kind of situation before. There was continuous rain. Incessant means continuous, never ending. So there was very heavy and continuous rainfall, and it was completely dark. Nothing could be seen. The trees which were very, very old, which were from so many years in the same place, were no more there. They were all uprooted. You can imagine the intensity of the storm. Now let us move ahead. Screams rent the air as people and houses were swiftly washed away. The angry water swirled into his friend's house neck deep. The building was of brick and mortar and was strong enough to survive the devastation of the wind's velocity of 350 km per hour. But the cold terror of the family grew with the crashing of trees that had got uprooted and fallen on their house sometime in the middle of the night, damaging its roof and walls. Now screams rent the air. That means there was such a loud noise of the people everywhere. There could be heard the screams, the shoutings of the people, which completely changed the atmosphere. There were everywhere screams, loud noises of people shouting for help, and the houses were all washed away. The angry waters, it all swirled. Swirled means when the water moves in a whirling position, so that is called swirling. So it is a circular movement of the water. So it seemed the water was very, very angry, and it entered into the house of his friend with its whirling motion, and the building, which was very, very strong, it seemed it could stop the wrath of the wind, but it was unable to do that because the wind was blowing at the velocity of 350 km per hour. It was such a devastating storm, and the cold terror of the family grew. The family members were so horrified, were so frightened when one after the other the trees started falling down. They got uprooted and the trees fell on their house. No doubt their house was very strong, but the way the trees were falling one after another on their house in the middle of the night, it damaged the roofs and walls of so many houses along with the friend's house also. Okay. Now let us know what happened next. The crazed destruction wrought by the cyclone and the surge of the ocean continued for the next 36 hours, although wind speeds had reduced somewhat by the next morning. To escape the waters rising in the house, Prashant and his friend's family had taken refuge on the roof. Prashant will never forget the shock he experienced at his first glimpse of the devastation wrought by the super cyclone in the grey light of the early morning. A raging, deadly brown sheet of water covered everything as far as the eye could see. Only fractured cement houses still stood in a few places. Bloated animal carcasses and human corpses floated in every direction. All round, even huge old trees had fallen. 2 coconut trees had fallen on the roof of their house. This was a blessing in disguise because the tender coconuts from the trees kept the trapped family from starving in the several days that followed. Now, the devastation continued for 36 long hours. It didn't stop. You can imagine the situation of the people somewhere inside the homes, and they could not even know when their houses fell down. There were so many trees which were uprooted, and this destruction continued and left people shocked. So anyhow, the speed of the wind had reduced, and Prashant could not believe what has happened. No doubt he and his friends, family members, they had taken refuge, means they had taken shelter on the roof, so to be safe, because the house was not safe. So they went up to the roof to save themselves, and the sight which was there in front of his eyes completely left him shocked and speechless. He had never seen this kind of situation, this destruction, this devastation in front of his eyes, which was just brought by the super cyclone in the early morning. He could see everywhere destruction. So the water seemed to have a layer of brown sheet covering, and there were only broken houses here and there. Those houses had all been destroyed, and what he could see more were the dead bodies of the animals. The dead bodies of the animals, it's known as carcasses, and the bodies of the human beings which is already dead. So dead bodies of the human beings are known as corpses, whereas animals which are dead are known as carcasses. And because it was in water, it had absorbed lots of water in their body, so it has swollen up, so it had become bloated. So he could see the bloated animal carcasses and human corpses. They floated in every direction. Can you imagine how many people lost their lives without even knowing that they were going to die? It came suddenly, nobody was prepared. All around there were uprooted trees. Thankfully, there were 2 coconut trees which had fallen on the roof of the friend's house. So this could be a blessing in disguise. Maybe it happened for the well-being of the family because of the coconut which were there. So the family didn't stay starved. They got something to feed themselves. So that was a blessing in disguise. Now let us move to the next part. What happened next? For the next 2 days, Prashant sat huddled with his friend's family in the open on the rooftop. They froze in the cold and incessant rain. The rainwater washed away Prashant's tears. The only thought that flashed through his mind was whether his family had survived the fury of the super cyclone. Was he to be bereaved once again? Now it had been 2 days, and Prashant was sitting all in the group of his friend's family, huddled in a group, sat together with his friends, family members, and they were all sitting in the open rooftop. They had no other option where to go in this situation, in this weather. And they were all sitting frozen. When you keep something in your ice box, so it becomes cold and frozen. They were sitting just like that. It seemed they have turned ice, but they could not help it because it was so cold and the rain was continuously going on without any halt. So the rainwater also washed away Prashant's tears. He was crying, but it could not be seen because it was raining and it had also washed away Prashant's tears. You can feel the pain of Prashant. The thought which was haunting him completely was whether his family is all right, whether the family was safe, because he had lost his mother and he didn't want to feel that pain once again. Bereaved means losing anybody close in your family. So the pain of losing someone very dear to you in your family is the word bereaved. So that's the pain which you feel when somebody which is very close to you leaves you. So he didn't want to feel that pain once again because he knows what is the pain of losing someone very dear to your heart, and it was his mother. So continuously he was thinking about that. How was his family? Were they all right? Were they all in a safe and secure place, or what would have happened to them? So now let us know what happened next. 2 days later, which seemed to Prashant like 2 years, the rain ceased and the rain waters slowly began to recede. Prashant was determined to seek out his family without further delay. But the situation was still dangerous and his friend's family pleaded with Prashant to stay back a little while longer. But Prashant knew he had to go. After 2 days, which were very long and painful for Prashant because the time seemed to be very long for him. He felt those were not 2 days but were like 2 years. Anyhow, the rain was controlled, it stopped, and the waters which had already been collected due to the rain, the intensity was decreasing. So the water slowly began to recede, it was going down, the level was coming down, and Prashant was determined that he was going to find out his family. Prashant was determined that he was going to find out his family without further delay. He was going to find out the whereabouts his family, whether they all were safe or not. But the friend of Prashant and also his family didn't want Prashant to live in that situation because it was not at all safe for Prashant to move out. They pleaded, they requested him to please wait for a little more time, but Prashant had no patience because he had already decided that he had to go and find out about his family's condition. So Prashant left. Let us see what happened to Prashant. Was he able to find out his family's whereabouts? We will come to know very soon. He equipped himself with a long sturdy stick and then started on his 18-kilometer expedition back to his village through the swollen flood waters. It was a journey he would never forget. He constantly had to use his stick to locate the road to determine where the water was most shallow. So Prashant was all ready and he equipped himself with a long strong stick. He had to go 18 kilometers away to his village, so he got a stick with him which would help him to go through the flood waters because the roads were all filled up with water. And that was a journey he would never forget. He constantly had to use his stick because the road was not visible at all. So he had to determine his point, the location where he was moving just with the help of that stick because the water was very shallow. It covered him till his half of the body, so it was very difficult to move in that condition, but he managed to walk in this situation also. At places it was waist deep and progress was slow. At several points he lost the road and had to swim. After some distance he was relieved to find two friends of his uncle who were also returning to their village. They decided to move ahead together. Now it was very difficult for Prashant because nothing was visible, the roads could not be traced, and at some places it was up to his waist. So you could understand how he would be trying to walk in that situation, and sometimes he could not trace the road also, so he had to swim all throughout. And after some time he was very much relaxed and relieved when he was able to trace two friends who were the friends of his uncle. So he got his uncle's friends, and they were also returning to their village. So in some way it brought some kind of relief for Prashant, because when you see someone whom you know, who is known to you, your fear becomes less, because you feel that there is a company, there is someone with you to support you, to help you. So Prashant's feeling was also like that, and they all decided to move ahead together. So the story is getting very interesting. Now let us see what happened next. As they waded through the waters, the scenes they witnessed grew more and more macabre. They had to push away many human bodies, men, women, children, and carcasses of dogs, goats, and cattle that the current swept against them as they moved ahead. You will not believe, while they were moving, they saw so many things which could not be tolerated. So the scene was becoming very, very devastating, and it grew more and more macabre. Macabre means very, very dangerous for them. It was very, very devastating for them. They could not tolerate the scenes which they saw when they were moving to their village. They had to push away, literally they had to push away the human bodies. There were men, women, children, and they were all dead. And there were the carcasses, the dead bodies of the animals were also there. There were the carcasses of dogs, goats, and cattle, and they were all dead because the current of the water, it had all swept them as they moved ahead. And in every village that they passed, they could barely see a house standing. Prashant now wept out loud and long. He was sure that his family could not have survived this catastrophe. So now Prashant could not believe that whether his family members were alive. So it struck to him that maybe this cyclone had taken away everything from him, because the way he saw the destruction and devastation on his way, there were all around the human corpses, the carcasses, and not a single house was there. So after this, how could one believe that his family would be all safe? It was not possible. So he could not believe that his family could have survived this catastrophe. Catastrophe is an event which brings destruction with it, something very dangerous. So that's a catastrophe. Eventually, Prashant reached his village Kalikuda. I know that you all have understood the chapter very well, and now we will see what have you understood. We have a question for you. Let us see. The question for you is here. What havoc has the super cyclone wreaked in the life of the people of Odisha? Yes, you are absolutely correct. So here is the answer for you. It was a devastating storm which washed the houses away and destroyed hundreds of villages. It killed thousands of people and uprooted a large number of trees. There were dead bodies all around. People became homeless, and many children who had lost their parents became orphans. This crazed destruction continued for the next 36 hours. The condition seemed grim after the super cyclone. So this is what happened after the super cyclone. it Odisha. There are many more things to know about Prashant and his struggles in Ersama in order to help the people of his village. So we are going to learn about it in the next session. So I do hope that you will be happy and stay safe. Till then, keep studying and be happy. Thank you. Bye bye.